Hi, Kinvara.
Hi,
Where in the States are you?
I'm in Los Angeles
Okay.
and I'm
You,
I'm afraid I have a very boring background because we've just moved house. So I'm in an extremely empty room filled with not much apart from me. I was hoping to have some cool chic background, but not yet.
yeah, but your presentation was amazing and that covered the empty walls.
Okay, good.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned several times zeitgeist.
Yes,
Could you explain it a little bit to us?
yes. So I do get asked this question a lot, and it's one of those words that has no alternative for me. It just is. For me, the zeitgeist is the culture that surrounds us. So for me, it really is that thing of I've got my own private zeitgeist, and then I step out of the door, and there's a sort of slightly more general cultural zeitgeist. But it's that thing of what you're seeing, what's new, what's changing. There is always a zeitgeist out there, and I like to sort of see. It changes. There are key creative leaders who kind of push that zeitgeist forward, like Karl Lagerfeld or David LaChapelle or Lady Gaga. Those people keep pushing that zeitgeist. But for me, it's something a mix of cultural, aesthetic, and a psychology is in there as well.
Okay. So each person basically have their own zeitgeist?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I think that's where social media has become so impressionable because before we were maybe just looking in our own home. Uh, I've lost you on my screen, but that's okay. I can still hear you, I think. Yes, yes. Okay, there you are. It's only when I'm speaking. Yeah, with social media, I think we start to realize that we're all having different, like we're looking at different realities because my Instagram feed is different from your Instagram feed. If you are on Instagram, I hate to assume that anybody's on all these things because I have a lot of friends who actually aren't, and I respect them for it. My boyfriend doesn't have any to do any kind of social media. I mean, he's aware of it, but he's not glued to Instagram every day, and I'm quite happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But my zeitgeist is probably very different from the person sitting next to me on the same sofa in these modern times because my Instagram, Twitter, Daily Mail, BBC News, whatever I'm embarrassed to admit that I've been reading that day, that zeitgeist is different. But in general, if you step outside the door, you're on the streets in London, you're on the streets in New York, you're on the streets in Istanbul. There is a zeitgeist out there, what the people are wearing, who's pushing that forward. There are trends that you see. There are there are styles that you see on people, the way that the architecture, the way that a shop's been built. That for me is the zeitgeist.
Okay. Okay, that's very interesting. Um, you talked also a little bit about influencers.
Yes.
Um, so, in your eyes, the traditional influencers are not influencers anymore, and the new influencers are the everyday people?
Yes. I mean, I've worked on magazines for 20 years. And when I began working at, let's say, I mean, I worked at Condé Nast and then I worked at the Telegraph. This was before social media, before the internet. And I would have 4 or 5 pages of fashion stories every week in this weekend supplement that went to millions of people in the UK. And for that reason, I was an influencer because I was able to say, this is the cool new bag, or this is a trend that's happening, and we created that narrative, and we had people. I remember my family, 3 sisters I have. We'd sit down on the weekend and look at these visuals and look at these pages for inspiration and for guidance, and to generally dream. And we didn't have any other pictures to look at in those days. There was maybe a couple of, TV shows about fashion that I would be glued to. Whereas now, I don't need those fashion pages in a magazine, a weekly magazine, to inspire me, to help me dream, tell me what I want to buy or rent, or resell. Um, and those people, those magazine editors, I mean, they're still relevant. They are still influential, but they're not the only influencers out there in the fashion industry. And I think it's because social media has enabled others to have a voice. and to have a visual platform, and you start to see perhaps, you know, a 16-year-old who was dreaming one day that she might be a fashion assistant in the olden days has just got off her own, you know, energies, sat down and said, I've put these nice things together, here's what I look like. And people have gone, I like it, I'll follow it. And those people really have become very influential. And it just, you know, increasingly more and more, there are people of all races, all religions, all genders, who are starting to have real followings. And you say, well, why are people following them? What's so interesting? And it's because they're doing something different or something new or something beautiful, and they're inspiring me. I mean, essentially, what do I follow? Hungry. Because the work, I'm not going to go out with a, you know, heavily made up face every day. It's not for me, but I love what I see. It's inspiring, it's different, it's beautiful. And maybe I'll take an element of that and add that to my own life. Maybe I'll take an element of, you know, there's a lot of those kind of slightly elegant, glamorous Russian people who are, you know, constantly showing us them in Paris Couture Week, and you think, well, lucky you've got childcare and a plane and a stylist and a makeup artist, so you can go and do that. But it's something that we like to dream about, and I think they have become the influencers. What I think is interesting in the pandemic is there are no fashion shows, and so some of these influencers that just, you know, gained a following from living this high life are stuck at home. You have to start to see who really is creative, to be creative from their bedroom. Those are the real influencers now, not just rich people.
So basically, social media gave people the opportunity to find things that inspire them.
Yeah.
And they follow those people who inspire them.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, isn't it true that, for example, if I want to have an opinion about something, I would look at what a person who is a professional in that area will tell me.
Yes.
So why do you think, I don't know, I think it's equally important finding an everyday person that inspires you, but also finding the people that are professional who can, you can learn from them.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I do think, you know, that one definitely wants to follow somebody's voice and opinion who knows what they're doing. I mean, I read the news every day, and then I'm also scanning Instagram. And I found that Instagram has, I mean, Twitter has become a little bit of a dumping ground of anger and irritation. Instagram is a little bit more of an aesthetic relief. But I do make sure that I follow news channels on my social media feed as well.
Yes.
And I look for what's happening. But I think that these documentaries are what is standing out as the voices of authority on everything, be it the true cost of fashion or what's going on behind the scenes in social media. Because unfortunately, the voices on social media, which we think are the authority, are sometimes fake. And I think that's what we're seeing is you have to start, you know, you really have to start questioning some of these accounts, some of these people. Are they even real, or are they twisting our brains and we think they're authorities? They're actually not. So who is the next authority? Who is the next trusted source? And I think it's really, I suppose it just reminds us that if you're a brand, you just want to gain the true trust of a follower. You know, whether you're the BBC as a brand, or David Attenborough, or, you know, or Valentino, you really need to create consumer trust and trust with the customer.
Okay. TikTok is not very big in Cyprus.
Okay, that's coming.
It's coming probably, but Facebook is still #1 here. Instagram is a close second.
Okay.
How is TikTok doing? I mean, is TikTok really changing the social media environment?
Yes, so TikTok's become so big so quickly that Donald Trump actually wanted to shut it down.
Yeah.
under the, you know, auspices is that it's China's spying on us.
Yeah.
But in America, TikTok has become this voice piece for so many young, where, you know, Instagram is maybe a visual platform. Twitter has just become a verbal dumping ground and a sparring match between grumpy people. Facebook is so cluttered with so much, and TikTok became this pure platform originally for kids to do some disco dancing around the kitchen and just have a good time. But we start to see now there's a lot of people. There's one girl gone really viral this week who's just breaking down various conspiracy theories. It's become, I suppose, the voice platform, whereas Instagram is the visual platform, Twitter is the verbal platform, and Facebook is the sort of everything platform. TikTok has just become a chance for people to really, in a short space of time, speak freely and speak authentically. And I think that's what we do see with all these Black Lives Matter protests and everything that's going on. And it's been crazy. I mean, it's really been crazy in LA. You know, I mean, whenever the riots were on, I was there with there were gunshots outside the door. I mean, we live in a nice neighborhood, gunshots, sirens, helicopters in the sky, people are, you know, smashing windows. That it's on a really serious note. There is, as we know, a real desire for people to be heard, for people to have their say, whether those fires have been stoked by foreign powers or whether people truly, truly do feel that on a grassroots systemic level that they are being prejudiced. That remains to be seen, how the fires are being stoked. But we do know around the world, we've seen it in countries everywhere on a political, you know, with everything, people are just desperate to be heard, you know, and these platforms allow them to be heard. And I think TikTok is definitely, it's just going to grow and grow. It's allowing people to be heard directly, which, you know, when Twitter first started, it was like, oh, revolutionary, I get to say some things. And that seems a bit old-fashioned now, just to type something out. That doesn't represent one's true self, whereas being able to do it vocally and verbally and visually with your own self is the next thing, I think.
Okay, good. If we go back to fashion, because we would like to hear a bit from you, because you have an expertise in the area. So what do you recommend fashion brands do now among this pandemic?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I think the reality out there is that the pandemic will separate the wheat from the chaff, if that's a known saying, in that the kind of really bad stuff is not going to survive, in that if it's a cheaply made terrible thing or a brand that was fake and had an arrogance and an ego about it for 2 seasons and then wasn't really lasting, I don't think those brands will survive for now. I think that's where the customer loyalty and trust comes in, because we're all at home. We're not really needing, I mean, you know, if you're Net-a-Porter or Moda Operandi, these big global designer e-commerce platforms, you know, if you're looking at the summer months that we've just had, normally your customer is going to the polo match, to a wedding, on holiday, needs a bikini wardrobe, needs a smart dress for something. None of this has been needed. And yet, I mean, my friend runs Moda Operandi here in America, and she says, you know, there is real brand loyalty. So with those who can afford it, they're buying pieces from designers that they love, even if they aren't going to wear them, because there is a support there and they want to support them. So I think if you've already got some brand customer loyalty, you can rest on that people in the back of their minds are saying, if I'm going to buy something, I want to go to someone I care about and love, because I think we're all really aware. If you're a brand now, I do think it's unbelievably boring to say it, but, you know, Instagram is a great platform for the direct to consumer situation. If department stores aren't buying what they used to buy, if magazines aren't printing editorially what they used to print to support those brands, I don't know what the future of the print industry is looking like. I think it's desperately sad if magazines do close down, but I think that's something we'll see in the next year or two. Some titles will just have to shut. And I do think if you're starting as a new designer, I mean, I mentor a couple of young designers who've been at St. Martin's, and you know, they're just revving up their Instagram game, taking matters into their own hands rather than waiting for Vogue to write about them or Lady Gaga to borrow their pieces, which used to happen, you know. But if Lady Gaga's not going out on the red carpet 14 times in the next month,
Yeah.
there's not 14 opportunities for that designer. So the ones that I've been mentoring are ramping up their social media and actually just perfecting their craft back at home. You know, I mean, factories are closed, so a lot of factories are still closed, so people have to be a little bit more inventive. I'm sure we'll see interesting ideas like we do always coming out of this crisis. But I think it's an incredibly hard time, and I do think social media is the only way for us to take the matter into our own hands and not sit and wait for Barney's, Harvey Nichols, Harrods, all those department stores. They're just not going to buy what they used to, and that's going to, I think, run for a good few years.
How can you gain customer loyalty right now? Because right
Yeah.
now people are scared, okay?
Yeah.
So how do you approach people? What do you say to them to gain the brand loyalty?
I mean, what I think right now is we're all financially concerned. Many people have lost their jobs. So the money we do have, we're going to want to really give it to something we really trust. And for me, I think quality is paramount. Mm-hmm. You know, I was yesterday buying some leggings in Lululemon, and I thought, I can't believe I'm spending $80 on a pair of leggings. But I was like, I'm going to this shop. I've come to this shop. I'm not risking something online because the quality is good and it's going to last. And I trust that quality. For me, it was that basic. So I think quality is still really, really key. As we all, you know, and we've also been sitting at home realizing we don't need half the stuff maybe that we had in our wardrobe and all this kind of thing. I mean, I speak not as a Sex and the City it girl. I mean, I'm really talking as a normal person. We're all downsizing our homes. We're all going into the micro living. You sit there thinking, okay, what do I really need? You say, I'm going to buy things of quality from now on. I'm not going to buy another t-shirt that falls apart after 4 washes, irrespective of the cost. So I think the brand quality and trust is really key. I also think people just want to cheer up. I think people want to have something colorful, something nice. I know for me, I was looking at, you know, what do I get everyone for Christmas? I'm starting to look on Instagram is feeding me Christmassy things. You know, and I think there's some optimism on the horizon for all of us. And if you're a brand that you can try and jump on that, I think it's time now to say, okay, come on, let's have something nice. Let's treat ourselves. It doesn't have to be with millions of dollars. It's just something. We are all consumers by nature. We do all want to buy things. And I think if we've had all this period of, you know, what's the word, holding back, I don't think it's going to be too bad forever, but I do think, yes, people are going to be much, much more wary of parting with their money because it's just such an uncertain time for so many, and none of us know if our jobs are on or off.
Yes.
So I think you just have to catch that. You know, if you're Nike, there were 40 people queuing outside a Nike store yesterday, and you say, what makes them bother to do that? Is just that they trust and know that product, that it's worth their time and worth their small money to go and get that product. Not because, you know, there's a cool person in there, not because there's, you know, some special guest appearance, literally because the stuff on the shelves is what people trust and want.
Going back to social media, with all these fake things everywhere, how do you protect your children from all this information which is fake?
Yeah. So when I first went to watch The Great Hack, which was the documentary that came before The Social Dilemma, it was out last year. I went to a screening here in LA with the producer and the director. And it was so alarming to me that somebody was suggesting that subconsciously underneath all this pretty pictures and tweets, and I used to be really active on Twitter, that there were some really quite evil forces at play trying to twist my mind, trying to twist politics, trying to twist the way that elections go. I honestly didn't look at my phone for 4 or 5 days. I felt like it was going to burn me like a fire. And that documentary was really powerful. And then this new one, The Social Dilemma, that everybody's talking about now again, looks less at what the governments are doing and just more at the impact this is having on our home brains. And I think what it said was, we cannot let governments make these decisions and put up fire guards and firewalls or whatever for us, is that we just have to take matters into our own hands. Like you wouldn't let a child run around a swimming pool unaided. Is that you wouldn't let your child jump on Instagram unaided, whether there's going to be some really clever controls that start to happen to say, this is good stuff and leave the bad stuff. But if we could create that, then we're doing it already. The reality is I think governments are starting to realize that these, we look at it, I say Mark Zuckerberg as one example. Does he know that the millions of dollars of ad revenue that he's taken in is paid for by dark political groups who want to cause social unrest? Or is he oblivious to that? And those are the questions that governments have been asking, and no one quite knows the answer. But I know they are making changes, and I think it's just really important for adults to be aware. I mean, I'm also of the mindset that, I remember when in the olden days, maybe when the radio happened or when the television first came into people's homes, they go, oh, this is damaging, this is scary. Well, we've all had some wonderful time sitting in front of the television and been very well entertained. But there's something so scary about this social media, especially for the children, where we don't know where the messaging is coming from. And I don't know the answer other than something like YouTube Kids, which my 2-year-old watches in limited right now, an hour of with a nanny. That's got no adverts, it's just cartoons, but I make sure I'm kind of checking what he's watching. That's as far as I can go. But I'm a new mother with a 2-year-old, and the question you asked, I have no, how much can we look over their shoulder? I don't know. When he's 14, how much can you look over the shoulder? Is to, I suppose, to educate them and say, you've got to be aware that person infiltrating your feed with some interesting message, are they who they say they are?
They'll probably know themselves as, from the day they're born now, they're able to use all the tech. So maybe they're born they get born knowing how to take care of themselves on social media. Maybe.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think it was very interesting talking to you. Thank you for sharing all this information with us. And
thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. I have lots of friends in Cyprus who've sent me always the things and I wish I was there. I wish I was there. Maybe next year.
Yes, hopefully next year you'll join us in person.
Thank you. Well, I say hi from Los Angeles in the meantime, and thank you all so much.